Welcome on in, everybody, to another edition of Crossover Thursday. And this time, it is a matchup that we only see once every 4 years. The last time we saw this matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles and, at the time, the Oakland Raiders, now the Las Vegas Raiders, was Christmas night in 2017, the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl. They are now in two different realms from where they were in 2017. Gino Camilleri here of the Locked On Eagles podcast, joined by your boy Q. I forgot the R there, but you can see his on Twitter at yourboyq254. Q, how's it going over in Raider Nation, my friend?
It is going well, man. I appreciate you, man. I look forward to this. The Eagles are a fun team to talk about. The Raiders are a fun matchup to talk about. Should be fun. I remember that Christmas game that you were talking about like it was yesterday. The Eagles got that victory. It was there in Philly. And, so the Raiders are trying to get their revenge this time around, even though, like you mentioned, being in another location now. So it should be fun, man. Philly and the Raiders on Sunday.
Yeah, you could say the last two times that these teams have played, they've been, I would say, meaningful games that helped the Eagles clinch home field advantage in 2017. And then the game before that was Nick Foles' Hall of Fame outing where he threw 7 touchdowns in one of the most miraculous performances I've ever seen in the NFL. But we're a long ways away from that. We're here in 2021. Big things going on in Philadelphia in terms of a rookie head coach. We have a rookie head coach to talk about in Las Vegas, Q. How's it going since John Gruden got let go? And we have another Italian-American head coach in the repertoire here in the NFL.
Yeah, Rich Bisaccia, man, he's the special teams coach. He takes over as the interim head coach for John Gruden after he resigned. And I'll tell you, man, it's been interesting. You know, he's really calm, cool, collective. You know, he doesn't get too worked up about anything. He's very humble. That's what I could respect about him is he's very, very humble. He's still doing his special teams duties, which is kind of, to me, a big deal because he's one of the better special teams coaches in the league. He's been there for many years. And so he's just kind of CEO in the show. You know, he's got Gus Bradley as the defensive coordinator. Greg Olson's calling the plays now as the offensive coordinator. And as you saw on Sunday against Denver, man, it worked out really well. The Raiders came out and played one of their better games. So we'll see if they could do it again another week in a row and, 2 weeks in a row and see how it shakes out. But, yeah, man, Rich Bisaccia seems like a really good guy that the one thing I've noticed is all the players really, really like him. They talk about how well they respect him and how he's always had their back and been in their corner. So I like it, man. It's been going really well so far. It's a small sample size, but hey, it's better to be a small sample size and be good than be something bad. So Rich Bisaccia gets a thumbs up from me.
And that's what's going on here in Philadelphia, too. And Lou and I say on our show all the time that Nick Sirianni has just this emotional intelligence about him where he really understands the players. And it seems like Coach Bisaccia now seems to have fit into that role very well. And there's something about hiring a special teams coordinator where they're interacting with those guys on a daily basis. And it sounds like from that one game sample size that he really got those guys to click. Is that correct, Q?
That's what it feels like. It really does. You know, again, I kind of had an idea that the team was going to rally around each other, especially fresh off of John Gruden stepping down. But, I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like because, again, Bisaccia has never been a head coach before. But you mentioned special team coaches. There's been some throughout the course of the league, the history of the league. Most recently, John Harbaugh. He's been the most successful. Obviously, Joe Judge is there in New York. But as far as success goes, John Harbaugh is a great example. And so it shows that it can be done. I think he's still learning on the fly. The thing about it is it's right in the middle of the season. So, it's not the easiest transition to make, but I think he's doing a good job. So he's been meeting with the media and those conversations have been going really well. So I think all is good as far as Rich Bisaccia goes and his interim head coach ability right now.
And before we really get into the X's and O's of the matchups, where in the next segment, I'll ask you some questions. We'll finish it up with you asking me some questions about the Eagles. What has been your overall, I would say, grade of the Raiders so far early on in this season? And I know they've had to overcome some adversity that most teams don't see, but to be in that division in the AFC West and to see where they stand, I'm looking at it saying Raiders fans should be pretty happy right now. And I don't know, you're in the mix every day. I don't know what the perspective is there, but I'd love to hear your take on that.
Well, it's been a roller coaster affair. It really has. When you start out 3-0, of course you're going to go win the Super Bowl, right? That's right. That's what every fan thought is, hey, it's Super Bowl or bust, baby. 3-0, here we go, and then of course they lose to the Chargers on Monday Night Football. A really good team, obviously. So they lost to them, but it wasn't like sky is falling. Then the John Gruden emails come out and all that starts busting up. And And then all of a sudden, Chicago Bears come to town and they beat the brakes off the Raiders. Just the Raiders looked bad that game. So then you really didn't know what to expect. So it's been, like I said, a roller coaster of emotions. Through all that, though, the Raiders are 4-2, coming off that big win against Denver on Sunday, a division game, their fourth win in the AFC in general, which I think is big in the long term as far as the playoffs go. So I think that the feelings are still really high for Raider fans. I just think that they're kind of cautiously optimistic because they just don't know if the bottom is going to fall out at any point or not. But really, through 6 games, feeling pretty good. That's why this game on Sunday against Philadelphia is so important because they get the bye week after it. So if they can come away with the victory, be 5-2, and go into the bye, get a little healthy, and come out and then have to face the Giants, you feel pretty good about the direction that you're going. But again, man, you got to take it one game at a time. And Philadelphia, as you know, is no slouch. It's not going to be a walk in the park, man. It's going to be a dogfight, as every game is in the NFL. So I look forward to it, but it's going to be a tough one for sure on Sunday.
I'm absolutely glad you mentioned that because if any Raiders fans have seen the performances from the Eagles the last couple weeks, outside of their game in Dallas where they really laid an egg, right, they've been close. They're not in the position to beat a team like Tampa Bay. Tampa has better personnel. They've been in that situation more times than the Eagles have. But to finish that game only losing by 6 points to a team that is I'd say a 40-plus point offense any day of the week, now going into an offense against the Raiders, which are in a division where you have to continuously put up 35 points. Yeah. I think that's a situation where the Eagles are saying, okay, we face some of these better teams. We know what it takes to play a 30-point offense. If things go right for this team, which we don't always know how they will go, and you know that, and let's be cautiously optimistic on both of our ends here. Yeah. This Eagles team can come out one week and beat a better team in the NFL, play a Kansas City tough, play a Tampa Bay tough, or they can just come out and do a lot of things bad that they have done early on in this season. And that's what we're going to get into as we continue this discussion. Already a good chat here with your boy Q, host of Locked On Raiders. I'm Gino Camilleri, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast. And as we come back, I will be asking Q some more X's and O's questions as we get deeper here into this dive on this crossover Thursday edition between Locked On Eagles and Locked On Raiders. But before we do that, this show is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it is now impossible for you to go to your local chain auto parts store and get all the parts you need. My fiance just had 2 tires pop in a single day on her car. And guess what? I said, go to Rock Auto. She got it way cheaper than what they were quoting over at the convenience store, as they call them, the one right up the road. But Rock Auto is always better for you. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. So why choose to spend 30, 50, or 100% more like my fiance almost had to do? We said, no way, we're going to Rock Auto, a great sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. Their prices are reliably low and for every customer, and they're family owned. So what is better than supporting a small business? So today, go to rockauto.com and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. All right, everybody, welcome on back here to Crossover Thursday between 2 teams that only meet every 4 years, potentially could meet in the future here. Now with that 17th game added, Gino Camilleri, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, joined by your boy Q, the host of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Q, we talked about that 30,000-foot view, what really is going on outside. Let's go inside. I want to start right at the quarterback position. I want to know, put the past behind him, Derek Carr. What has been your evaluation of Derek Carr in this early season through 6 games?
Well, he's been the team's MVP for sure. He's been balling out of control ever since that week 1 matchup, that Monday night game against the Baltimore Ravens. He's been really in control, and he's got some really good weapons to throw the ball to. And that's one of the differences in Derek Carr this year as opposed to Derek Carr in the previous years, where he didn't really trust his weapons. Henry Ruggs, former first-round pick, really was a disappointment. His rookie year only had 26 catches. He already has 20 catches already in the season. It's only been 6 games, so he's obviously on the same page with Derek Carr. Bryan Edwards, third-round pick out of South Carolina, he's on the same page with Derek Carr. He's being trusted to catch the ball down the field. Darren Waller, of course, is going to be the guy, the go-to guy. Everyone knows his name. He's a household tight end now. He's one of those guys you always have to plan for. But He's been doing everything he's got to do. And really on Sunday, I was impressed. The first game after not having John Gruden on the sideline and in his ear, he has Greg Olson, his offensive coordinator, doing the play calling. I was wondering, okay, how's this going to shake out? They were together his rookie year, but he hasn't done any play calling for 5 years. How is this going to be a good rhythm? And he came out and looked sharp. He really did. Now, that was the first game Olsen had called plays in about 5 years, so there was no film on what he likes to do, his tendencies. Now Philadelphia will have those tendencies, but I still think it was just a nice, refreshing change of pace for Derek Carr. You saw a lot of play action pass. You saw, a screen pass. You saw some things that you hadn't seen from the John Gruden play calling. It got a little stale and predictable. This was very unpredictable. So he's been aggressive with his arm. He believes in himself. He believes in his guys. So I'm very impressed with what Derek Carr has been doing every year. I keep saying this under John Gruden. He improved. Now John Gruden's not there, so now he's really got to take that next step. As a leader, as a player, as a go-to guy on the team, he just got to continue to be that MVP that he's been so far this season.
Yeah, let's talk about those weapons you have in the passing attack. I know Darren Waller. We all know who he is as a player, but we have an Alabama wide receiver here in Philadelphia. Talk about your Alabama wide receiver. And I would say this resurgence of Henry Ruggs, since he seems to be fully healthy this year and just can take the top off the ball.
It's funny. I love DeVonta Smith. I love the receiver that the Eagles have. I'm a big Alabama guy anyway, so I roll Tide all day. I like those players. But I think that Henry Ruggs and DeVonta Smith are very similar, where I know DeVonta Smith is smaller in size. He's a hell of a player, but I feel like he kind of struggles to get off the line of scrimmage right now. That's what Henry Ruggs did his rookie year. He struggled with route running because this isn't college anymore. He's, no longer just part of this huge, great arsenal. He's expected to be a big-time player. So in the offseason, he got bigger, put 13 pounds of muscle on. He got stronger. He ran better routes. He got out in the park with Derek Carr early and was building that trust that I talked about earlier. And it's paying off now. You see Derek Carr throw him that 50-50 ball. Like if Darius Slay on Sunday goes up against him, there's a chance that Derek Carr will throw it up and say, hey, go make a play. It's either you make a play or knock the ball away and don't let Darius Slay come up with it. Now, we all know Big Play Slay is called Big Play Slay for a reason. So there's a chance that he might come up with the play, but Derek Carr is going to give Ruggs that opportunity because of all the work he put in the offseason. And I do think that that's eventually going to be DeVonta Smith as well. He's going to get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and be that guy, for whoever the quarterback is in Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts or other. But it's Henry Ruggs has been great to see. He sounds a lot more confident, and he loves his quarterback. And he's just going out there making plays, man. So Derek Carr is getting him involved in the offense early, and it's paying off, especially late in games with some big-time plays. Right now, he's averaging over 22 yards per catch. So that lets you know that he's making some plays. He's getting involved, and he's getting involved early.
Yeah, Quez Watkins over in Philadelphia, averaging around 21 yards per reception as well. And I see a lot of what Henry Ruggs does down the field, in DeVonta Smith and in Quez Watkins. Yeah. And that's the modern day NFL wide receiver. So you have to draft an Alabama wide receiver to be in things these days, it seems like. Let's switch to the running attack. And I kind of want to ask this as a two-pronged approach here with the offensive line before we switch to the defense. Is the result of the running game from the performance of the offensive line, or is it the running backs just not making it work with what they have?
Well, I really think it's more the offensive line, and that's why you saw a better run game and better performance from the running backs on Sunday, because the offensive line had their best game. They really have. And Alex Leatherwood, another Alabama guy, he was expected to be a tackle. He's kicked in the guard because he just wasn't cutting it there. So Brandon Parker's now at the tackle position, the right tackle position, and they were able to open up some holes. Josh Jacobs had a decent game. He hasn't had a 100-yard game yet, but he had a decent game. And Kenyon Drake, another Alabama guy, had a good game as well. And he had been basically a no-show all season. So he actually got some burn. You saw Josh Jacobs get some burn. Josh today said that, he's healthy. He felt fast at practice. I mean, it's one of those things where he said that I haven't felt this way in a while. I had a toe injury and an ankle injury that's behind me, so I got that burst back. And you could see even when he came back from injury that he was a little bit didn't have his legs underneath him, but you could tell he does now. So I'm expecting to see a better performance on the ground moving forward, especially if that offensive line that was newly constructed, it was built in the offseason, if they can start to get some continuity. That they just didn't have that continuity. They were learning each other, and I think that they're getting a little bit more acclimated to each other. And if they can do that, they could be really good. It's just the problem has been up front. They haven't been able to get it done up until last Sunday against the Broncos.
Yeah, real quick on Leatherwood. I know a lot of us saw that early game performance on primetime football. How has that change from tackle to guard paid off for Leatherwood so far?
Well, I just think he's probably more built for the guard position. Now, they drafted him and said immediately, hey, he's going to be the right tackle of the future. That's his job. But he just doesn't seem like he's ready to fill that void. Maybe at some point in his career he will be, but kicking him into guard, a position that he did play in college. I mean, he's played multiple positions in college. I just think it gives him a little bit of security blanket there on the right-hand side from the tackle position and just kind of makes him play a little bit stronger. And I think he wants to block that nose tackle. I mean, I think he's more comfortable at that guard position. So he's got a mean streak. He's a little bit of a mauler when he's in there, when he's comfortable. So I'm assuming that that's going to end up being his ultimate position, and he's just going to get used to that and settle in that position and have it hold it down moving forward. But so far, so good. Especially, I mean, he had one game where it was okay at the guard position, but this second game, he looked a lot better. So I think that that's really going to be where he settles in at.
He'll have a tall task going against Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox, and I'm sure you'll bring them up in the next segment. Let's switch to defense before you start to ask me some questions. The strength in Philadelphia is the defensive line. It looks like that's the strength right now in Oakland. How has it felt to have a pass rush after all these years of trying to acquire these guys? Max Crosby looks like he's playing at an all-pro level. Tell me about this unit and tell me about the rest of the guys that are performing well.
Well, I'll tell you right now, as a guy covering the Raiders, it's nice to have a team to cover that has a great defense. And I say great, it's not great yet, but it's getting there. You know what I mean? And it's a lot better than it's been in years. And Gus Bradley, you got to give him a lot of credit. He's the engineer behind it, brand new defensive coordinator with the Raiders this year. He's done a lot of good things. You mentioned that defensive line. Max Crosby's playing an incredible ball. He sobered up this offseason. Actually, he's been sober now for about a year, a little bit over a year, and you could just see the difference in him. He looks like he's out there playing fresh and free, and he's playing fast, man. That's the thing. He's really fast, and it helps when you have Unique Ngakoue across from you. You know, he's a guy who's a certified pass rusher, but I've been impressed by the interior. The interior's been getting pressure. They don't have huge numbers, but they're getting good pressure up the gut, which is allowing guys like Max Crosby, allowing guys like Unique Ngakoue to have an opportunity to eat, as far as the edge rushes go. So I've been impressed with the whole defensive line. It has been a strength for the Raiders, and the defense has been a strength throughout the course of the season, which, again, as a guy covering the team, it's surprising to say that because it's been so many years since they've had a really good defense. But they're on their way. Like I said, it's not great yet, but it's good, and it has potential to get better.
I know exactly what you're talking about. There's been days where my dad will just sit at the dining room table and tell me about the great Raiders defenses of old. And I'm like, Dad, I'm not going to remember any of these guys. I'm 12 years old. But now that I'm talking about it all the time, it seems like it's right back to where you want a Raiders defense to be. Let's finish it up here. Tell me about the back end. It seems like there's a lot of moving parts back there. Fill our Eagles fans in on what the situation is in that defensive backfield in the silver and black.
Well, Eagle fans are very familiar with Jalen Reagor, TCU wide receiver, obviously a first-round pick from, a couple years ago from Philadelphia. Really good wide receiver. Well, he's very familiar with the Raiders' second-round pick this year in Trayvon Merrick. And Trayvon Merrick is playing that free safety role, that Earl Thomas role, if you want to say, going back to Seattle. He's playing that role, which allows Jonathan Abram to come up into the box and play that Cam Chancellor role. Jonathan Abram has kind of been a fish out of water his first couple years in the league, because he hasn't been playing a position that he's comfortable with. Now he's up in that role. He's in that box. He's able to play physical. He's able to get after the quarterback. He's able to go up and hit somebody, help out in the run game. You could just see how much better and more comfortable he is playing. So I think Trayvon Merrick, even though he doesn't have big-time numbers, he's still a big-time factor because he's playing that role, that single high safety role, and he's playing it well. He's the last line of defense, and he's not scared to go in there and make a tackle and be the last guy. There's a big play about to happen unless he makes his tackle. More times than not, he makes that tackle. So he's been really good. Now, I'll say the secondary in general, Casey Hayward's been really good as well as a veteran in the league. He didn't have a very good year last year with the Chargers, but this year he's been playing lights out, man. He's got some of the highest Pro Football Focus numbers as far as corners go. Across from him is where my concern is. There's a lot of injuries with the Raiders. Damon Arnett, former first-round pick, he was already running with the twos. He's on IR. Trayvon Mullen was running with the ones. He was the guy across from Casey Hayward. He's on IR. So the Raiders have been kind of tinkering with different guys. Brandon Faison is the guy they brought in. They just signed him off the Chargers practice squad a couple weeks ago, and he's playing good ball. He got an interception on Sunday. They just signed Desmond Trufant. I don't think he'll play on Sunday, but he's just another veteran presence. Kind of a rotating door at that other corner position across from Casey Hayward. But for the most part, man, it's been a pretty solid secondary. And again, that whole defensive unit has allowed the Raiders to stay in games when they don't get off to good, hot offensive starts, and has allowed them to get to this 4-2 start.
I think fans of defense will love this matchup. A lot of hard-hitting guys, a lot of trench play that's going to be great. Clinical to watch, I feel, on Sunday. I don't think this is going to be a blowout by either side. I think it's going to be a rough and tumble, old-school Raiders, old-school Eagles type of matchup. Q, thank you for everything about the Raiders. And now on the other side, you can roast me and my Eagles and figure out whatever you want about the Birds. But before we do that, we have a message from our friends over at Bet Online. BetOnline.ag, we're back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all basketball and football action this season. There's tons of basketball games on in the next 48 hours. And if you're not betting them like everybody else is, you better go to betonline.ag. And when you go there, make sure you use the promo code Locked On to receive your 50% welcome bonus from basketball, football, baseball, NHL, boxing, UFC. The list goes on and on to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, here we are back on the crossover edition, one of my favorite shows of the week to do each and every week. This week, we're talking Eagles, we're talking Raiders, Week 7 action. Gino Camarelli joining us right now, host of Locked On Eagles. And Gino, it's been a lot of fun talking Raiders, but let's talk about the Eagles now. The Eagles' record is not what anyone in Philadelphia wants it to be, not what it was expected to be, but records, I don't really worry about them. I look at the games and I look at the game film. And what I see from watching the Eagles is a team that's a lot better than their record says it is. What has gone wrong with the Eagles so far in this young season? And how good is this team, or could potentially be, that's coming into Allegiant Stadium on Sunday?
That's the question. How good could they potentially be? I like that point that you threw in there. And they have the potential to be, I would say, one of those middle-of-the-road teams. Lou and I thought if they got to 7 wins by the end of this season, it wouldn't be too far out of the realm of possibility. When you go from playing the hardest first schedule stretch in those 6 games to now the easiest schedule for the remaining part of the season, things are going to start to turn around. And what the Eagles have done is they've loaded up their guns and they've shot themselves in the foot repeatedly. I mean, they've done it now for even since the Super Bowl season. They're leading the league in penalties. It was by a long stretch for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Simple things like the receivers are running their routes too far out, which causes them to get pushed out of bounds by about an inch or two, which has now cost them 3 interceptions on long passes this season. They're taking dumb penalties. Jannard Avery took one, a taunting penalty that rule is driving me crazy at the end of the game last week against Tampa, which ultimately handed them the game. And when you're a team that has a rookie head coach, a quarterback who you're still evaluating, young pieces at the wide receiver position, offensive line, and your defense is starting to come into that youth movement as well, you can't beat yourself, especially when you're playing Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. I mean, even this week, an experienced Derek Carr and that Raiders defense that will be relentless with those fans. If you shoot yourself in the foot 2 or 3 times in that game and you have to settle for field goals, which you have, the game can get behind you. And a team like the Raiders, who I believe is a team that plays with the lead very well, they're a team that if they get out in front, their defense can kind of settle in. They won't give up the big plays, like you said, with Trevon Moehrig on the back end. That could be a situation where the Eagles want to avoid. But if they play well, we've seen them put out 230-point offensive performances this season. Their defense, when they play to their caliber, has held teams below 30 points, a Tom Brady team below 30 points, which I think might be the biggest success of the season. with guys like Darius Slay and Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, their veteran leadership, by having that element and those guys that have won big time games and stepped up through 60 minutes in big time moments, that'll keep you in games at times. But when the engine isn't really working as well and you're sputtering and you're about to run out of gas and you don't know what it takes to win that game, a more experienced team will win, which we have seen. And the Eagles are 2-4 for a reason. I do like what you said, though, that they have the potential to be better. I fully agree that they have the potential to be better, especially in this division. When they play 5 of their last 6 games against division opponents, you could pick up 4 wins right there.
Yeah, exactly. You can create a lot of intrigue towards the end of the season playing those teams right there. And you mentioned the quarterback still being evaluated. I like Jalen Hurts a lot. I liked him coming out of Alabama. I liked him coming out of Oklahoma. Thought that he's a guy that's got some winning traits, and I think that he's a good guy. I like how the Eagles got him in the second round. I don't think that they expected to play him as a starting quarterback as soon as they did, but here we are. That's what he is. So what's the good and the bad? Kind of compare and contrast. What's he do really well besides run the ball, as he's leading the team in rushing yards right now? What is he doing really well, and what is he doing where he needs a little bit more work?
Yeah, real quick on that point, that when you draft a player at 53, and I look at Drew Lock in Denver as well, you're drafting a player to be the guy in that first round, right? You're taking a guy in the second round and beyond to potentially evaluate to be that guy. And I think that's right where we are with Jalen Hurts. The good from Jalen Hurts, I believe his ability to overcome adversity in that Carolina win where they're down a few scores and things aren't going well. They're out not getting even 100 yards of passing offense through the first 3 quarters. Then he settled in, and when all the chips were against him, everything was going awry, he can settle in and he has that winning mentality, which for a quarterback, having that cutthroat mentality at the end of a game can take you far in this league. But it's what he does until the end of the game that really is a little bit frustrating. And he's a young guy still that you do have to evaluate. He wasn't in these offenses where he was asked to make multiple reads. Yes, at Oklahoma, he had a high percentage of completions. But, I mean, when you have one of the best play designers in college football, guys are going to be schemed open, especially Cedarian Lamb, especially Hollywood Brown. Those guys are going to make plays. Jalen Hurts has to figure out what is open in the NFL. And I think that is his biggest weakness right now, because he's holding onto the ball at times when a guy might have that half step, like he might have beat the half man at the corner position, but he doesn't want to let it go. And I think that is still from only playing about 10 games here in the NFL so far. You can develop that, but it's how long are the Eagles going to hold on to that? And in the NFL now, guys are thrown into the fire. And I don't think they really feel remorse for quarterbacks if they can't figure it out. And that's what's going to happen now. And once you got past that tough stretch, you're 2-4, you were able to hold your breath above water for a little bit. Now when you're playing a stretch where, we know that Oakland is going to be, or Las Vegas. I knew I was going to do that one time. Las Vegas is going to be a tough test with their defense. But then you play the Lions. Then you play a sputtering Broncos team. In this mix of games, can Jalen Hurts step up to the plate? Because if he can't do that against that type of caliber opponent, I don't know if you were going to see him ever do that against the elite talent. And that's my ultimate fear, is because in a division with Dak Prescott, who looks like he's not going anywhere for the next 7 to 10 years, you have to have a player that can beat the division. You draft to beat your division. Why is the AFC West the way it is? Because they've played that same division, those same opponents for 30 plus years. They know how to play each other. You know how to go into Arrowhead. We know that when we go to Jerry World, we're going to face a tough offense that scores 40 plus points. And if your quarterback can't carry you to that, and I know there's questions with a rookie head coach, a lot of rookie pieces, but when you turn on the film, and I know you do, Q, and you see those guys that got that half step and he has his eyes down looking to run, that's a teaching point that you really have to see him overcome if you are going to feel confident in him past 2021.
No doubt about it. And that's part of the evaluation process. We're talking right now with Gino Camilleri here on the Locked On Crossover Edition, Eagles, Raiders, and the guys that protect Jalen Hurts, the offensive line. Max Crosby, as far as the Raiders defense, Unique Ngakoue, those guys on the defensive line, they've been getting home really well this year. How is that offensive line? How concerned are you that, Jalen Hurts might have to run for his life, not because, well, he's comfortable with that, but just because, well, the Raiders defensive line is getting after him.
Right. And I think they could take away a lot of what they've seen from Tampa and Carolina the last 2 weeks, built very similarly with guys that are going to come off the edge. They're going to get upfield. They're going to take 3 steps. But that allows Jalen Hurts to be a little bit more attacking. He can pull that ball a little bit more. Those guys up front in the run game, they haven't really held their own now with a mix of guys that have gone in there. But in pass protection, they've done a phenomenal job, in my opinion. And I think a lot of the pressure that has been created comes down to your QB not holding on to it, not stepping up in the pocket. And you can only ask a left tackle to defend a guy like Max Crosby for 3 seconds.
Right.
If you want him to hold him for 5 to 6 seconds every time, he's going to hit home like he has done in the past. But they did a fantastic job of holding Vita Vea at bay. They held Jason Pierre-Paul at bay. The only guy that really had a huge day in the last couple of weeks was Hassan Reddick, who beat Jordan Mailata, who will now hopefully be playing left tackle in this game with right tackle Lane Johnson coming back from personal matters. If he could settle in and those guys on the outside could hold that edge pressure home, I'm still worried about that interior pressure from the Raiders because as good as the Eagles' offensive line has been and what they see in practice, you can only sustain so much pressure on the interior week after week after week where you're going to get worn down. It's going to be late in the fourth quarter, and you might just not have that extra push with a young guy like Jack Driscoll and Landon Dickerson, who are respectively only in their rookie season for Dickerson and their second year for Jack Driscoll. Thank goodness you have Jason Kelce up there as well. But I expect this to be a back and forth game between the trenches, and especially in the interior, which is my biggest fear because Jalen does have the speed to get to the edge as great of an athlete as a guy like Yannick Ngakoue and Max Crosby are. Jalen Hurts is leading the team in rushing for a reason. He could get you to the edge. But if he has to deal with pressure up front all day and you throw him off his marker and you get him to roll left instead of rolling right, you could see another performance where he doesn't hit past 200 yards in this game. And the Raiders have been known to get after quarterbacks, especially this season. That's my biggest fear, if I have to be real with you, Q. That interior pressure from the Raiders is frightening.
Yeah, well, they got a healthy rotation that Gus Bradley and Rod Marinelli and company likes to send at the quarterback, so that should be a good chess match down in the trenches. And we'll get to the defense in a few minutes. I want to stick with the offensive side of things. Let's talk about some of the weapons. DeVonta Smith, obviously first-round pick out of Alabama. Jalen Reagor, former first-round pick out of Alabama. Zach Ertz gets traded to the Cardinals. Dallas Goedert's in COVID-19 protocol. Talk to me about some of the weapons, man. How are you feeling about the weaponry that Jalen Hurts has at his disposal?
Yeah, it's much better going into a gunfight with having guns at your disposal than the knives and bats that they had last year, and Alshon Jeffrey, who really couldn't do anything towards the end of his career. Now you have a rejuvenation, and I say that this NFL cycle and how personnel works is like a 3-year cycle. The Eagles are behind on where they should be at the wide receiver position. I think Las Vegas, you got your Henry Ruggs, you have a guy like Bryan Edwards, who's a really do-it-all guy, a premier tight end, and Darren Waller. You can't forget Hunter Renfrow, who we saw as very similar player in Cole Beasley in this division for the longest time. Guys like that, you have a guy who could take the top off, a top-notch tight end, a big possession receiver who can also make plays down the field, and an elite route runner in those short to intermediate areas. The Eagles are getting into that realm now with Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell being able to do that in the backfield. They have enough trust in Dallas Goedert to trade the second all-time receiver in receptions in Philadelphia Eagles history in Zach Ertz. They have that tight end, they feel. Now you have 3 wide receivers who are all 4.39, 4.4 caliber runners. It's just coming down to getting on that same timing with the quarterback. There have been times where Quez Watkins just catches unbelievably soft hands on the sidelines, just has a football IQ to get his feet down from a throw with Jalen Reagor that's perfectly timed. But then at times there's a play where Quez Watkins gets behind the defense and Jalen just doesn't see him. I see the potential in this unit, and I think it has many, many yards to go before they get there. But to see the vision of where they are going, I think is ultimately the best win, in my opinion, for this offense, because you could see that they're going in the trends of Kansas City, what the Raiders have been doing in Las Vegas the last couple of years. Now the Chargers, that whole division, you see it. You have to have playmakers all over the field. It's like building an NBA roster.
Right.
You can't just have two guys anymore. You have to have 4 or 5. You got to have a great sixth man. You might even have to have a seventh role player on the team that comes out there. And you're looking at a team like Arizona and Baltimore and Buffalo, who are the top of the top. They got 8, 9 receivers who these guys are completing passes to. I see the vision. We're getting there, but we're still trying to get our feet under us. Those guys, though, I could watch DeVonta Smith run routes from morning until night, and I don't think I would ever get sick of it. He is that good at running routes. And I think Henry Ruggs from the same tree, those Alabama guys, you get up in there and Nick Saban is going to be in your ear that you're not running any banana or curl routes. You're putting your foot in the ground, you're cutting, and you're using every part of your body to get open. And I think that's a great leader to have in that department in DeVonta Smith.
Yeah, DeVonta Smith, man, big fan of his coming out of college, man. Love the fact he won the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's going to be a good player in the league, really good player in the league, as a matter of fact. Similar to Henry Ruggs, smaller in stature, but got speed to kill and got great hands. So excited about what he's going to be able to do. And hey, if he gets loose this week, I wouldn't be surprised because he's got those moments. Now, there's one area of the team that I feel like should be being used more, and that's the running game. I feel like the dogs are there. The guys are there. The horses are in the stable, but they're not being called upon enough. And Jalen Hurts, we mentioned, he's leading the team in rushing. And then Miles Sanders is behind him. But why isn't Miles Sanders getting fed the rock a little bit more?
I think that this week is the perfect time to do it. We know that the Raiders are susceptible to letting up the run. Against Tampa, you kind of have to throw that one out the window. They've held every team that they've played to sub 50 yards out of the backfield. But still, in those games like Carolina, where you're not giving the guy the ball, a lot of their runs are designed RPOs, where it is a read from a run to a pass, which ultimately goes into Jalen Hurts reading that as well. But it's still Nick Sirianni figuring out what he has in Miles Sanders, which shouldn't be too difficult to figure out because he was one of the most explosive runners in the NFL the last 2 seasons. He had the most 75 or greater yard runs in the NFL the last 2 years. I think it's only a matter of time before he gets going, and I think you saw it towards the end of the game last week in Tampa. You're not going to run against Tampa when they're loading the box with 7, 8 guys. But when they had 5 and 6 man boxes, it was evident that the Eagles can run the ball. I don't think that's the issue. I just think it's physically saying, okay, scrap an RPO. We're going a firm run here, and we're just going to put our head down and gain a couple yards. And that's what it takes for a running back to have to get into gear. I mean, a guy like Josh Jacobs, you want him touching the ball 20 to 22 times a game because he's only going to get better as the game goes on. And running backs really thrive on that getting in a rhythm mentality. And that's kind of what it's come down to. The idea that those called run plays are more passing options than they are a run, and just having the gall to just give the ball to them. I think that's what it comes down to in the end. I don't think we're going to overcomplicate this. I just don't think they have force-fed Miles like they should be.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know he's a hell of a running back, and I just haven't seen him get the touches that I think he needs. I think he needs more, like you mentioned. So, Gino, I want to flip over to the defensive side of things. I know that Eagles' defensive line is strong. I kind of look at the Raiders' defensive line, look at the Eagles' defensive line, and see some similarities. They're able to get after the quarterback. They're able to do it from the defensive tackle position, the middle of the line. They're also able to come off the edges. So, what are your thoughts on the defensive line? The Raiders' offensive line is still trying to gel, so they're not quite there yet. They had a better game on Sunday against the Broncos, but they're still, work in progress. So how much do you think that defensive line is going to be called upon to get after quarterback Derek Carr, and really only with the front four, not really calling too many blitzes?
Yeah, they don't really blitz at all. And I think it comes down to the guys on the back end ultimately not having the athleticism to hit home there. And when you have the guys up front in Derek Barnett at your one edge, Josh Sweat at the other, who you just signed to a major extension, Fletcher Cox, who is one of the best interior rushers now for a decade. Then you add Javon Hargrave, who is having arguably an all-pro season, and I think he should get all-pro status right now based on his play. And then you talked about it with the Raiders, you have this rotation where they have 8 or 9 guys that they're rushing at the quarterback. I think if you're a Raiders fan, you want to hope that they play the defensive line like Tampa did, where they were able to kind of scheme those 2 interior guys out of it and keep that edge pressure at bay. But a young unit like the Raiders that Carolina threw out there a couple weeks ago, which was still trying to get its legs under it, trying to gel, they got really tossed around and had a bad day at the office, which caused Sam Darnold to have some headaches. I think the Raiders offense will have a better opportunity to kind of stop them in pass protection with your running back. I think Josh Jacobs can kind of handle a lot of those interior rushers, chipping those guys. You're going to use Darren Waller. You're going to use a guy like Fabian Moreau as well on the edge. I loved him coming out of college simply because he could block so well as a tight end. I think those guys will have a better opportunity to do that. But when you have the caliber of play of those 2 guys in the middle, there's 3 guys on the offensive line that you're going to scheme to try and take those 2 guys down. One of them's going to have a one-on-one situation. And if those guys don't win up front, it could be a long day at the office for the Eagles. And that unit has ultimately kept them in games a majority of this year.
You mentioned Josh Jacobs earlier, and you talked about him getting about 20, 25 touches. Between him and Kenyon Drake, they look like it could be a good 1-2 punch based off what we saw in Denver on Sunday. And their running game really hasn't got going yet, but I feel like it's on the verge. And I know that the Eagles defense, as much as they get after the quarterback, them, similar to the Raiders, are kind of suspect against the run. So what's been the biggest struggle, in your opinion, when it comes to stopping the run for the Eagles? And do you get kind of concerned that maybe this is a game that Josh Jacobs, that Kenyon Drake, that Jalen Reagor could kind of get loose in the run game against them?
I absolutely think so, and I've always been a big fan of Jalen Reagor. You had Kenyon Drake now there to that formula. You have 3 pitches that you could throw at this defense, and I think you kind of like what you saw from the Eagles tape against Tampa last week, and a guy like Leonard Fournette, who has that lower half like Josh Jacobs does, and is going to put his shoulder down into your linebacker every single play. The Eagles linebackers could not handle that for 4 quarters last week. And then you have that changeup pitch, which I don't think Tampa had in Kenyon Drake and Jalen Reagor, who Jalen Reagor can do a lot of things in the passing game as well. If you're going to win this game, I think it's through Darren Waller, and I think it's through the running back position, because the Eagles' middle of the field and their ability or their lack of ability to cover that area is my biggest concern. On the outside, they've done a fine job with the corners, but their linebackers are suspect at tackling. They only really have one serviceable one right now in Davion Taylor, who is only getting his first reps at that position. That is prime for the picking. And if I'm targeting a weakness for this Eagles team, I'm throwing Darren Waller on an option route against their linebackers every single play. And then I'm going to have Josh Jacobs run a little wheel route behind it, because the Eagles linebackers aren't going to be able to process that out on the field, and it could be a big day for those guys. And I think you should like what you're going to see from the Raiders, especially since that's been kind of a weak point for that team. I think the Eagles are the get-right game for any running back unit in the NFL.
Wow, you mentioned that wheel route, and my eyes got big because Kenyon Drake just had a big day against Denver with that wheel route. Had a nice 31-yard touchdown catch from Derek Carr, hit it right on the money. If that wheel route's there, Jacobs might run it, but I'll tell you right now, you mentioned the 2-headed monster with Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake might really start eating that way as well. That's the reason why the Raiders got him, was to kind of be an option guy, be a guy who can catch a rock out of the backfield, just do multiple things to kind of complement Josh Jacobs. If they can find success with the running game, man, you're basically telling me it could be a long day at the office for the Eagles in that defense.
Yeah, I really think so. And I mean, with the stress that Henry Ruggs can put on the back end of a defense, they're going to have to take that into account. But the Eagles will give you 8 or 9 yards every play in the middle of the field with the tight end, or even your check down to your running back. And they have this bend, don't break mentality. But when you get into the red zone and you have threats like Darren Waller, there's only so many times you could take punches before you do break. And we have seen teams do that. I think the Dallas game was evident. Like, there's only so many times you can have CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, and then you have a changeup of Ezekiel Elliott. When
Right.
you're built like that, you could get to the middle of this Eagles defense for sure.
Wow, it's going to be interesting, man. Really going to be a hell of a matchup. I'm looking forward to Sunday, obviously. Before I let you go, man, and this has been great. I definitely appreciate it. What have your thoughts been on the new head coach? I mean, it was kind of a weird shakeup. You really hadn't heard about, the coach when he gets the job, and then all of a sudden here he is. So, what has just been your early thoughts on Nick Sirianni and what he's been able to do with the Philadelphia Eagles so far?
Funny thing about Nick Sirianni is that Lou and I, when we lived in New York, lived an hour away from where he went to high school. So we knew about the Sirianni, like this coaching family that they had in high school football. But the NFL is a little bit different than high school football. That is for sure. I do like what I have seen from Nick Sirianni. I think a lot of it comes down to Jalen wasn't drafted when Nick was here. He's still finding that comfortability with him. But his ability to let these guys be humans before that they're football players, I think is really the biggest victory for Nick Sirianni so far. And the Lane Johnson situation around the NFL, I don't know how many teams would have handled that as well as the Eagles have. And I don't know what happened with Lane, and I don't care to. It's a personal issue.
Right.
But there's been teams that, they leak things like that. The Eagles have a guy there that really cares about his players, has enough in the play calling repertoire with what he has, and is still gelling with his coordinators as well. I'd give him about a C plus B minus right now. I think 2-4 after that stretch isn't the worst thing in the world.
Right.
It's just now with the rest of the season, with the schedule the way it is, if you go on this stretch where you lose 6 out of 7 or even 6 out of 8 games like they did under a rookie Doug Peterson in 2016, then we might start to bring into question. But right now, like I said, C plus, B minus, I'd say he's doing as good as maybe any rookie head coach outside of Brandon Staley, who's just blowing in the doors off the AFC West at the moment.
Didn't he have some D3 football traits before he got to am I right about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 3-time national champion at Mount Union. Yeah, he was a wide receiver. Yeah. Yes, sir. He's that's why he's great with our wide receivers, and I thought he was a guy that when you look at Jalen Reagor and what he had faced in his mental health concerns as well, Sirianni kind of has gotten him in a better state of mind, and he's allowed him to go out there and run routes better. And you see him in practice and all these behind the scenes being on the shoulder of a wide receiver and putting his pads down. Say, get your pad level down. Make sure you cut with a sharp foot. And I think that, and just wearing the T-shirts of the guys, like when Brandon Graham got hurt, he's a good camaraderie guy. I'm an Italian-American guy. I'm a camaraderie guy. I like to know who I'm talking to. That's why I love all of the hosts here at Locked On. Like, we got guys like you, Q. I know you're all good people. That's what Nick Sirianni sees in his players, and that could take you much farther than any X's and O's, as we saw with Chip Kelly back in 2013 to 15. Knowing what your players do well and putting them in that position, Nick Sirianni knows it. And I will preach from the mountaintops for that. As whatever Eagles fans say, he is a guy that still is only 6 games into his tenure. Give him some time. He still is able to connect with these guys and compete with some of these better teams in the league. You've seen rookie head coaches lay absolute eggs against these teams. We saw Joe Judge in the mess that they have in New York get blown out the other day against the Rams team that is just as good as a Tampa team that we played in the same week. So I'm not giving him too much hate right now. You got to just let the cards play out.
No, shout out to him, especially shout out to him when he was at Mount Union. I used to cover Mary Hardin Baylor in Texas, and
kidding.
Used to go and compete with Mount Union all the time. And I remember my guy Coach Fredenberg always said, "I want to be just like Mount Union's program." So yeah, no doubt he's got some good traits. Final question for you, man. The Bears fans, they traveled really well to Vegas. Allegiant Stadium was packed with orange. What are your expectations for the Eagle fans? They travel really well as well. How many do you think are headed to Vegas on Sunday?
I know that Raiders fans are going to pack that place, but Eagles fans, I said it yesterday on my show, I think they're one of the top 3 to 4 best traveling teams. You put Buffalo in there, you put Philadelphia, you put a team like the Las Vegas Raiders, who would probably go to the middle of Russia to watch the Raiders play if it really came down to it. the Eagles fans will travel well. I'd say if you got like 35% of the 35%, I wouldn't be too shocked at it. It was a tough ticket to get now that it is in Vegas, a little bit more pricey than it was when it was out in Oakland. I was looking at tickets, trying to see if I could surprise my dad, but they were a little bit out of my price range. I do expect them to travel well. And the thing about Raiders and Eagles fans, I think they're the same exact fan base, just in two different divisions. They've had success. You guys got Super Bowls. We finally got a Super Bowl. They love their team. They'll boo their team, but it's all out of love at the end of the day. And they're going to support the black and gold or black and silver, and they'll support midnight green and white until the day they die. And that's what I love about it. They're going to travel well, and I'm sure you'll hear them on TV either booing or doing some Eagles chants for this team at some point.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, it's going to be a lot of fun, man. Allegiant Stadium is awesome, so I'm sure that they'll enjoy being there. And I know that they travel well as well. Definitely a well-respected fan base as far as their passion. They love their team, win, lose, or tie, whatever. They love their team for sure. So Gino Camilleri here with us on the Locked On Crossover Edition. We do it each and every Thursday, man. Appreciate you. Great insight. Good luck on Sunday, and continue success with what you're doing there on the Eagles podcast.
Same to you, Q. And you guys know where to find us always on the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Raiders, Locked On Eagles. You can find Q at your boy Q254 on Twitter. I do apologize about leaving the R out in your name. I know I will get crap in the comments for it from good. Raiders Nation, who shout out to Raiders Nation. Love the interaction we had on our YouTube channel with you guys. We're going to be rooting for you all throughout the season. We don't want to see the Kansas City Chiefs get to the playoffs again. We're sick of Andy Reid winning outside of Philadelphia. So best of luck along the rest of the way, Q. It was good talking to you. Fly, Eagles, fly for me, and best of luck to Raiders Nation.
There it is.